So this is part 2 of the conversation we need to have about racism in Zimbabwe. This part is specifically to do with the Twitter thread on At Midnight is a Place. The Twitter account has a thread that I was very interested in. Also, the display name is Belinda, and it's a lady that runs the account. It's her account. I will try and link not only just the thread, but also the Twitter account on my description box. And and the correct spelling of the account. Lego. I'll be reading. Hi guys, so I've been seeing that the discourse online among Zimbabweans has been either about racism, mostly as it pertains to the US, Australia, the UK and Europe, or about police brutality and the Zimbabwean/South African context of that, i.e. how the forces in power have brutalized their own people. Both are important conversations that should continue to happen. But I want to implore you to talk about racism that's separate from police brutality in the specific context of Zimbabwe. I've been waiting for us to talk about this more because racism is rampant in this country. And I was reminded of this a couple of days ago, hashtag Blackout Tuesday. By the way, I'm filming this like way after that. So that was the time when people were posting black squares on Instagram in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Anyways, I'll start that paragraph again. And I was reminded of this a couple of days ago, hashtag Blackout Tuesday, when I saw a post by a white Zimbabwean that was quite blatantly racist. And I realized that the non-black people I know who also saw this post, especially white people, were just completely disengaged and didn't do anything to speak up about that. We have a culture in this country of sweeping it all under the rug. Yes, not just racism, but quite a lot of issues, and pretending it's not there, but we know it is. Black Zimbabweans, you know the racism you've experienced here. White Zimbabweans, you know of the racism of the people around you that you ignored or didn't call out, or you know of your own racism. And Zimbabweans of other races, you know the ways you have been anti-black or were complicit to anti-blackness. Why are we not talking about this? So let me just look through this and make sure I read this right. Okay. So basically, she is talking about the fact that we need to have a conversation, which is something I said in part 1. Like, we definitely have to have a conversation about racism and just in general the effects of colonization. Like, colonization needs to be defeated not just on paper, not just politically, but also, in our minds, in our hearts and everything. And I think that we have not really dealt with it head on, and the effects of colonization are making themselves known to us or apparent to us. But I do also want to highlight the fact that she's also included Zimbabweans of other races, and I said that in part 1 that anyone from any race can be a participant in racism, whether you are a perpetuator of it or you are or you are complicit in racism or not speaking out, like that whole saying that silence is also violence. So we need to also speak up about it. And I did say in part 1 that racism, unfortunately, in the minds of quite a lot of people is only just it's only between white people and black people, and specifically white against black or white on black racism. And that is not a complete image of racism. And therefore, because it's marketed that way or it's depicted that way, a lot of other races, no matter how much they contribute rather to racism, they feel as if it is not their responsibility / not their fight, because they do not see themselves in the way that racism is depicted. they feel as if because they're absent from the depiction, they should be or they're allowed to be absent from the conversation, and therefore, it becomes a very incomplete conversation. Anyways, let's go. I just think it's wild that some of you are disengaging from this global conversation and racism and anti-blackness on the basis that it's an American issue, as if we don't have our own race issues to address here. Amen. So racism is a global conversation, and last time I checked, Zimbabwe is part of the globe. And I think a lot of people try to sectionalize issues like, oh, no, poverty is only found in Africa. Oh, no, racism is only found in America. Sexism is only found in this country. And all these human issues, all these issues that are coming to light are present in almost, if not, let me just say this, are present in every country. It's just that sometimes it is expressed in a different way, and therefore you can't always draw reference to other countries. You get me? So to only put racism on the shoulders of America and not on everybody is just wrong. And then she goes on to say, so I'm going to start by sharing a conversation about racism in Zim schools I had with somebody yesterday. And I'm open to having more discourse on it in the DMs with those that want to share their experiences of racism in Zim schools or elsewhere in Zim. So you can go to her account and talk to her. But one thing I really like that she says, or elsewhere in Zim. And so racism doesn't just occur in one place in Zimbabwe, it occurs everywhere. These students, these teachers that engage in racist behavior, these students and these teachers that engage in racist behavior, they come from outside the school. They have their own communities that they surround themselves with. There's a discourse in those communities, and you need to really go and deal with racism outside of a school perspective. Also, not every Zimbabwe is in school or works at a school. So, in order to have an effective conversation, we need to include everybody from every walk of life. Anyways, now we're going to the conversations. This person says, dude, I actually checked out with Zimbabwean whites back in high school. Okay, so by the way, I know I said any race and anyone from any race can be a victim, can be a perpetuator, and can be complicit in racism. But majority of this thread is about white people, and yeah, just know that. Second message, I was like, this is just going to kill my spirit, Lord. How can I have hope for people who at 18 years of age say, I don't know, my parents just told me it's wrong to mix races, so I can't date a black boy/girl. Anyways, that whole dating mixed race, interracial dating, that's just a subsection of the conversation, but that is just an example that person gave. I will point out some of the things that I get from this message. He says, how can I have hope for people who at 18 years of age say da-da-da-da-da? And I understand him, because at 18, you're starting to realize the autonomy and the agency you have over your life. Be it choosing a career that's not the career choice that your parents had for you, or just realizing that a larger part of your life is now in your hands. And really, 18 is one of those ages where you really start to try and cement the identity you have for yourself. And so, and for a lot of us, that identity, we try to separate it from our parents, or even if it is in connection to our parents, it's our own version. So it's just, it's like, dang, bro, why are you so willing to create an identity for yourself in every other aspect of your life except this? Also, the other thing that I'm concerned about is that a lot of people have this idea that children can't be racist. Racism is taught, or ignorance about racism is taught. Okay, how can ignorance be taught? But yeah, it's what I'm trying to say is that nobody is born racist. It is a learned behavior, whether it's a behavior learned on the basis of ignorance or intentional behavior. And so at 18 years of age, which is a very young age in terms of the lifespan of a human being, already these type of ideologies are in their head. So it's just really sad. Anyways, this message says, maybe since you came up a little later, the kids were / acted a bit more woke. Around my year, they were so blatant. At St. John's, a private school in Harare, it was so unapologetically expressed that white Zimbabwe as a collective think black people are inferior, that I figured at Gateway, the whites were only less racist because they were outnumbered. Ooh, wow, this is actually crazy. But yeah, why would the sentence that gets me here is, I figured at Gateway the whites were only less racist because they were outnumbered. He didn't even say they weren't racist, they were less racist, and pointed out because they were outnumbered. You shouldn't be less racist because you're outnumbered. You should just not be racist at all. So yeah, next one. Okay, it's the same thing. Then she goes, thoughts, experiences at the top, and I'm going to read the messages. It was definitely a lot less overt in my time, but it was, though. Well, clearly this is a continuation of a conversation we can't read. Anyways, we all knew it was there and we felt it. From other students who isolated themselves in little white groups and kept black peers at arm's length. From teachers who showed favor towards non-black girls or targeted specific races to pick on. I definitely experienced that. And sometimes it falls under microaggressions, which I talked about in part 1 of this topic. And it's like, sometimes you're like, it's like you gaslight yourself. Like, is it in my head, or am I really deep in that this person is actually showing favor to these type of people? There were teachers in my school that were definitely impartial, but there were some instances where it was like, the hell, I remember one time there was this cleaner, when things would get dirty and she saw black kids around, she would be more confident in shouting at them and telling them to not be, or to be more careful and not be untidy. But when there were black girls, she was just silently cleaning. And I know that's a cleaner and not necessarily a specific example for teacher, but that's just one of the ways in which there's this culture where white girls, let me not just say white girls, but whiteness as an idea is placed over black people. But yeah, from even the school rules that were tailored to be oppressive to black students, or the way white girls were more easily rewarded for their achievements and given positions of leadership. So yeah, that's racist. Anyways, I think this is another conversation, judging from the difference of format. But anyways, yeah. Oh, it could be her. Yeah, the microaggressions were therefore more present than overt instances. But people would talk and they'd say derogatory stuff about black people. And then you see places like Tin Roof, okay, where they put up Trump paraphernalia. Okay, so this word basically means like Trump props and Trump, objects, stuff like that, like maybe a MAGA hat or MAGA t-shirt or something like that. But yeah, just props and items that are from Trump's campaign, which is clearly yeah, anyways. And you see they are on these Facebook forums and ish called Real Rhodesians or whatever else, talking about how black rule has ruined the nation and they miss Rhodesia. Anyways, Rhodesia was what Zimbabwe was called before independence, and basically for them to be saying Real Rhodesians, they feel as if they really belong to, or they feel like their prime came from pre-independence time. And then there's the sentence talking about how black rule has ruined the nation and they miss Rhodesia. It is no secret that Zimbabwe is essentially ruined. However, it is not an inherently black thing to ruin something. There are many organizations out there that are headed by black people, owned by black people, that do very, very well. But yeah, because now the nation moved from white minority rule to black rule, there's this idea that for Zimbabwe to really be at her prime or at her best, it must be done by white people, and it is only through white people that Zimbabwe can reach her potential. And the reason why Zimbabwe is where it is right now is because the rule was given to black people, and so it is inherently a black thing to ruin something. And so, yeah, a lot of people quote that quote by Ian Smith saying that, black people wouldn't be able to rule themselves for 100 years. And they feel as if not just the failures of Zimbabwe, but the failures of Africa are an indication of this. I think the failures of Zimbabwe and Africa is based on greed, which is present in any race, anything, any person, right? So it's really frustrating for people to place inherently good characteristics on white people and inherently bad characteristics on black people, giving rise to ideas that whiteness is good and blackness is bad. And this is just one of them for me. And that they miss Rhodesia. So basically they miss white rule. Second message, and I remember early days of uni for me back in 2013-14 when I was still a Facebook keyboard warrior, and I would post for Trayvon and Michael Brown. These were African Americans murdered by police brutality, by police in America. And that's when the white people from school started coming out of the woodwork saying I should quit playing victim when I don't even talk about racism against whites back home. All right, let's talk about this. The whole, you guys, why are you talking about racism as if us white people don't experience racism? Like I said, anyone from any race can be da-da-da-da-da. You know the sentence by now. And so no one's disputing the fact that white people have experienced racism or can experience racism. The issue is that your experience of racism still does not take away my experience of racism. The same way when I talk about how I have experienced racism, I am not trying to shut you out of the conversation. In fact, if you feel as if the conversation about the racism that whites have experienced is not being had, start it. Or join conversations about racism in a meaningful and constructive way to involve white people and involve their experiences. Because it just doesn't make sense to me that when I come up with my own story or my experience talking about an underlying issue that affects both of us, that you would then want to come in and shut that conversation down when it could benefit us both. The conversation about the effects of colonization are not there to put guilt on white people or to exclude white people or to exclude white pain. If you want the conversation to include you, include yourself in the conversation. It's like if I get robbed and I go and go and create a police case, and somebody comes to me and is like, why are you going to the police? Stop crying. Even I got robbed, but you don't see me crying. And it's like, bro, if you got robbed, you too can go and have a case with the police or go and report it as well. Why are you trying to dissuade me from reporting it just because you haven't reported it or just because you aren't talking about it? And for me, I hope that example was clear, but for me, that's what it is. It's like, if you are experiencing what I am experiencing and I'm speaking up about it, why not also join the conversation? And so to feel, this is the thing, let me go back and read. And then she says, saying I should quit playing victim when I don't even talk about the racism against whites back home. It's one thing to talk about somebody else's experience, and it's another thing for somebody to talk about their own experience. If you feel as if no one is putting light onto your experience, talk about it in a meaningful conversation. Anyways, let's carry on before I take up your time. The gaslight. Okay, I'm now reading the black part. Then it says the gaslighting, the stop pulling the race card chat. And the funny thing is, in Zimbabwe, we don't even talk about racism. So when people say stop pulling the race card, I'm like, the times in which we pull out the race card are few and far between. For you to feel tired of the race card already is very telling for me in terms of the mentality of a person that says that. Anyways, how many of you have heard that from one of your white peers? Why are you concerned about racism over there? It doesn't affect you. seeing the plight of another human being and helping them, even though it doesn't directly affect you, or at least the way in which they are hurting doesn't affect me, doesn't mean that I should just sit back and relax and not speak out. Because it's like saying then charity should not be done because now I'm fussing over somebody else's problem when it doesn't affect me. No. It's a thing of humanity. Like it shows humanity if you are willing to help somebody else, even if what they are going through specifically doesn't affect you. But racism affects us as well. And carrying on, not everything is about race. Yeah, not everything is about race, but race is a very important thing. And race seeps into, or at least racism seeps into every nook and cranny of, am I saying right? But every nook and crack, not cranny, every nook and crack in our society. And so to say, oh, not everything's about race, you should just shut up, you should just stop. Not everything is about race, but quite a lot in our society is. Race is important. Let's not lie to ourselves. If you meet somebody from a particular race, trust and believe that immediately, without you having to really think about it, you already have the common stereotypes and biases and misconceptions about that race playing in your head. However, it's what you do after that that's important. And you can imagine going through that everywhere you go, that your race is already speaking for you before you even open your mouth. And so, maybe not everything is about race, but race is important. It is a very important conversation to be had. And another thing I noticed about whiteness in Zim, once I really started seeing it, it's that it's really important to roadies because that's where they get their self-esteem from. Roadies is the name given to people that want to go back to white minority rule, or those that idolize and fantasize about the way in which Zimbabwe was before independence. And it's not just white people that are roadies. I've seen black people talk about, we need to go back, which is so funny to me because it's like, some of you don't know, if we went back to colonization, y'all wouldn't be living in the house you're living in right now. Y'all probably wouldn't be using the phones and the internet and the technology that you're using right now. You wouldn't be able to go to the schools that you're going to right now. You wouldn't be able to even, like my dad would tell me that when he was growing out, there were certain parts of town you couldn't even go into without a pass, and to get a pass you would have to work in specific industries. So for people to idealize such a time where you're restricted to one crappy part of town where your houses are small and you're cramped and everything, for me it's like, are you dumb? Why would you fantasize about a time when you and your people were oppressed? But a lot of people really, and they're called roadies, they really want to go back to the way Rhodesia is. And it's back to my point where it's like they feel as if the success of Zimbabwe is inherently a white thing. The success of Zimbabwe can only be gotten through white people. Anyways, we all know there are white people in our circles that take a lot of pride in their Rhodesian heritage and think it's their birthright to live in a society where they are superior to black people. Why aren't you talking about that? Let me read the message first. It's scary because we're the collateral. Fortunately, in Zim, it's no longer as overtly violent, even though I've seen some ish, like white farmers physically, quote-unquote, disciplining their employees. But it still affects, and that's the whole thing of, we need to talk about the effects of colonization because, just rewatch part 1. You're talking about white people getting certain positions at school over a black person, etc. That ish has wait guys, this is a big word. reverberating effects. That, I hope I'm saying that right. That prefect title could equal a scholarship or place at uni that's taken away from a deserving black kid, or the crazy school rule that could create a complex in a black kid that leaves them feeling insecure and ineffectual as an adult. That's very true. When you constantly oppress somebody, they start to question their validity or start to question their importance and feel insecure about themselves. Feel as if there's something wrong about them, something that they need to fix. And yeah, your 2020 is really the year that's showing us we need to do something. The world as it is right now is a hellhole, no matter how many patches of ostensible good it contains. So basically that last sentence speaks to how a lot of people be like, oh no, but they're good. Like that whole thing is like, oh, the cops aren't a bad thing. It's just a few bad apples, da 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 da. And it's like, okay, there are good people out there in the world. Absolutely great white people. There are white people that have impacted my life for the better, that have really invested in me, and I could never take that away from them. However, the behavior of those white people does not excuse nor justify the behavior of other racist people. And not just for white people, black people, colored Indians. The good actions of a few does not, excuse or justify the bad actions of the other group. Anyways, on to the black part. It says, minor racism has an impact on black people's futures, their relationship to their blackness, and even the future conduct of the white people that we allow to be racist or to benefit from racism without calling it out. So yeah, it has an impact on their futures, like the example she gave of the scholarship. Their relationship to their blackness. Yeah, so that's when people start to have self-hatred. They hate themselves for being black. They want to be white. It's a bad thing. And even the future conduct of the white people that we allow to be racist or to benefit from racism without calling it out. When an action has no consequences, people will start to believe that it is acceptable to act that way. And so when racism has no consequences, people will normalize it and, will believe that, well, if this is not a bad thing and there are no consequences attached to it, then I can continuously do this or continuously benefit from this and not feel the need to call it out because society has shown me it's not a bad thing. I won't get, punished for it. Anyways, I had a chat with someone the other day about racism, especially in primary school. And for me, I went to a very racist primary school, majority white, and it was very overt and in your face. But I think as kids, especially black kids whose parents grew up navigating the world post-colonialism, or in their prime, the freedom struggle was going on. We weren't really aware of the racism. You ought to, this grammar it's actually punctuation, not grammar. But we weren't really aware of the racism. Let me start this again. And for me, I went to a very racist primary school, majority white, and it was very overt and in your face. But I think as kids, especially black kids whose parents grew up navigating a world post-colonialism, or in their prime, the freedom struggle was going on, we weren't really aware of the racism. You automatically think white people are less racist because they're outnumbered, or that institutions, because they're in your country, are going to protect you. So let's delve into this. So the first part about black kids whose parents grew up navigating the world post-colonialism, or in their prime, the freedom struggle was going on. I think it's how we have conversations about race with our black parents and how our experiences and their experiences aren't the same thing, and therefore produces different outlooks and ideas about race. And therefore sometimes it's hard to marry the two, or sometimes it's hard to get advice from parents, or sometimes it's just hard to make reference to their life, because it's still racism, but it's not expressed the same way, and so it's just hard to relate sometimes. Back to that issue of you automatically think white people are less racist because they're outnumbered. Don't do that. Or that institutions, because they're in your country, are going to protect you. This one, that institutions, because they're in your country, are going to protect you. Yeah, I'm gonna just carry on because I can't really structure an argument about that point at the moment. Anyways, in primary school, it doesn't look like how it does in high school, where people are calling you, oh my god, those words that you guys see there. It's more from your teachers than your peers, and from them it's coming from the white parents who don't want to admit they're angry you're in their space. If we're honest, you can't recolonize private schools because they're Western in creation. We can only try to make them less harmful, but that's a whole other chat about what decolonization really is. So basically what they're saying is that a lot of these schools were created on the basis of racism. Their whole existence was to be a racist institution, and therefore the mere introduction of black people into these spaces does not remove that from these institutions. And therefore it is easier to just create another institution that is inherently impartial than try to fix a system that is so is just founded on their partiality and on racism and segregation and stuff like that. For me, I was always too something. I had my first black teacher in my life in grade 7. Oh, wow. And before that, I was too loud, too rowdy, challenging of authority. And recently, I've sat down to examine the language and what it did and what it truly means. I don't think I was ever too loud. Rather, I think I was sure of myself. I need to go. Yeah, and my talents, because that's how I was raised, and they didn't like that. I don't think I was ever too rowdy. Rather, I was charismatic and enjoyed making my black peers laugh and feel comforted, and they didn't like that. I don't think I was very challenging. What? I don't think I was challenging of authority. Let me just say that. Rather, I think I just wanted to know more, so I asked questions because I was encouraged to at home, and they didn't like that. My point being, from very young in these spaces, we tell black kids they're too something traits they would praise in our white peers. We were often shunned into thinking we were wrong and that we had things about ourselves to fix. I don't think any child, especially a black child, has bad traits. I think kids are very impressionable and malleable. And I think when white authority comes across blackness that is comforted and assured in its blackness, there is a problem. Institutions that were never built for us can never be decolonized because it was never African. It was never ours to begin with. But we can decolonize how we make, as black people, step into these areas that aren't for us and what culturally we are taught by shrinking ourselves and doubting ourselves. Agree. I'm very lucky that I was a very naive kid and I lived in my head a lot because I didn't realize till I was a teen that I was actually bullied by teachers and by my white peers. But not every black child has the privilege to live in their head about their blackness and be comfortable in it. Personally, I feel like the racism talks in Zimbabwe are centralized in the private school context, and I talk about this in part 1. Yes, things are boring and disgusting things happen, like groups of white people calling themselves roadies, teachers showing blatant racism, and specifically black girls, coming out of there with genuine trauma. I feel, however, that the broader implications of colonization is what is really disturbing this country. Amen. For instance, in businesses or what people see as good quality schools or hospitals. Yeah, about this and how we think success and greatness is inherently a white thing. And that we believe, okay, if it's a business or school or hospital that has any presence of a white person or any presence of whiteness, it is inherently a better business. People will be like, and I've heard this sentiment before where a black person and a white person can say the exact same thing, but for them, it's quote unquote more believable when a white person says it, and things like that, where people believe that whiteness is an assurance of goodness, of success, of quality, and blackness isn't, which is a problem. Anyways, it's a she. goes on to say, I think this debate is coming up now that Arundel girls are speaking up about what was honestly unfair or unjustified criticisms on our school and its standards. The fact that we were majority black, still academically successful, had better grounds than any other school, and were killing it in the sports and cultural sides. They, white and our black brothers and sisters, couldn't bear it. We have all, as Zimbabweans, been so institutionalized to think that white is superior in every way possible. Amen. We've seen studies like this, and experiments done where they gather children and they put in front of them dolls of multiple skin colors from white to black, and then they say point out which one is the good one, and they point to the white doll, and they say point out which one is the bad one, and they point to the black doll. And it's so telling that even from a young age, society conditions us to believe that whiteness is the goal and blackness is something to be shunned. But yeah, Hellenic is now seen as the school, particularly because of its white majority. And let me not lie, I too fell for this when I first moved. But in all seriousness, after I was there for about a term, I was like, this is a normal effing school. With deep racial issues though, but there was nothing that special about it. Acknowledging the atrocious misrule of ZANU-PF, I still cannot believe a lot of black Zimbabwean people want to go back to Rhodesian times. Like, are you kidding me? What? And I said that, like, oh my gosh, Rhodesian times only ever benefited one group of people, white people. And for black Zimbabweans to look at the rubbish that we're going through in Zimbabwe right now and attribute it to only blackness and think that they will have a fair chance, a better life, and no oppression nor segregation in Rhodesia is laughable. My friend, Rhodesia was built on your demise. It was built on your oppression. And for you to want to go back there is just... Anyways, it says, no people were free from racial subjugation, and essentially what was slavery, wanted to willingly go back to being there. Don't get me started on that Cody kid. Who's Cody? Anyways, our country needs to do so much decolonization. Even when you think about the roots of choping and having a gouache accent, it is all self-hatred, every bit of it. So going back to shunning things that are associated with black people want to talk like white people, with that accent, because it gives this impression that they are better and stuff like that. Anyway, Nigerians are so firm and confident in who they are as people, how they speak, what they wear, how they pray, everything. Zimbabweans, although it's not just us running away from our identity. And let me be clear, I mean mainly the upper middle class. So basically, the upper middle class black people are the people that are successful. And like I said, whiteness is, in terms of success, people strive for whiteness. And so they, feeling and seeing the success that they're having, will try to assimilate to whiteness and what white people want, or just in general. And so they send their children to school with white people on the premise that the mere presence of white people is quality. And so they want to do quote unquote white things, even though I don't think there's such a thing as a white thing. But yeah, they want to be engaged in activities that are quote unquote white or are attributed to white people, places that are attributed to whiteness or to white people or created by white people. And therefore they perpetuate this damaging ideology that white is superior. And they're sometimes even the type of people that would say, oh, we need to go back to Rhodesian times, blah 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 blah. That's the end of it. But yeah, a lot of people like how some people make reference to the fact that black kids in Rhodesian times were given milk and stuff during break time at school. And it's like, bro, you're given milk and you're going to school only to stop at O-level and be somebody else's gardener, or to be an artisan, or to have a low entry job. Like, that is not a life. And it's so weird. It's like some of these people are businessmen. And I'm like, if you want to go back to Rhodesian times, do you really think in Rhodesian times you'd have the business that you're having right now? Do you really think in Rhodesian times, your children that are going to private school, would they be allowed into that private school? Would they be even allowed to even walk by the private school that they're going to right now? In Rhodesian times, do you think that you'd be able to own the house that you own, or drive the car that you drive? No. So yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And my little rants, I try to make it as short as possible, but every time it keeps going over 30 minutes, almost to 40 minutes. So it's just a lot that the thread encompasses and that the thread, shows. And there are amazing points that I wanted to expand on, and some that I just left because I felt as if they were expressed correctly. Anyways, don't forget to comment, to like, to subscribe, give me some engagement, like, comment, have a discussion in the comment section, and not just a discussion amongst black people, but even amongst coloreds, even amongst Indians and amongst white people. There is not just one race in Zimbabwe, and therefore racism is not just a one race problem. But yeah, see you in the next video.